Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of Into the Blue Zone, a plant-based production. Today we have lovely and special guest, Michelle May. Michelle, thank you so much for taking precious time out of your day to come on Into the Blue Zone and talk about what you're doing with regards to the vegan food pop-up in Encinitas, your own food brand Seva Foods, and your new launched company Benji's.
Hello, nice to be here today. Thank you.
So Michelle, we were just chatting a little bit ago, and it sounds like you were not raised in San Diego. Give us a little background of where you're from and your passion for veganism.
Absolutely. So I was raised in all places, a rural area outside of Houston, which was a very interesting place for someone like me to grow up. Being raised vegetarian and having that from my family definitely made us different from the people that were around. But it was a good way to grow up. I think it made me feel really strong in my own beliefs. Always loved animals from an early age, and that was a big part of my vegetarianism. I think, like a lot of us, my family wasn't aware of the atrocities of the dairy industry. I think we would have been vegan for sure.
And then when did you transition from vegetarian, which, to clarify for the listeners, is dairy products included and eggs?
And eggs.
And
Yeah.
eggs. And then vegan. When did you kind of take that next step?
Well, I, about 15 years ago, I got my first dog. And I had no idea that I was allergic to dogs. And so I realized pretty quickly after getting him that I had some issues, and I went and saw an allergist, and he tested me and said, yes, I was allergic. He prescribed a lot of medication for me to take, and a steroid inhaler and an emergency inhaler. And I kind of just lived with it. And then I got another dog, and it was twice as bad. But I happened to do a cleanse through my yoga studio where we eliminated all animal products. And within 3 days of eliminating dairy, all of my dog allergies went away. So even though I loved cheese and had grown up eating a lot of it, obviously being vegetarian, it was an easy choice for me to make. That also happened to dovetail with me. I can't even remember who gave me this book, but somebody gave me the book Skinny Bitch, which is a really sneakily, I feel like, titled book, because I think it appeals to a certain sensibility in a lot of women. But then when you get the book, it's really about so much more. And it was really my first exposure to the horrors of factory farming. And so it became pretty easy for me to make that decision. I wish that I could say I went vegan then. Unfortunately, I did still consume fish until I moved to San Diego in 2011. And I think just being by the ocean, having that awareness, and wanting to be nice to fish, in addition to all the other animals, was the reason I finally made that choice.
So it's been 11 years.
Yeah, it's been about 11 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Thank you.
That's great. I did a podcast last time with my friend Patrick Collier, and he's like, it seems like people who are like plant-based and vegan, they just spiritually are in a better space. Do you feel like more confident and hold yourself in like a higher regard, not of others, of your past self, with the decision you've done to basically not harm or eat animals?
For me, it's really comes down to, whether I can be okay with myself at the end of the day. And it would be so hypocritical of me to consume other animals, because I truly love other animals and I want the best for them and for the entire world. Being a yogi, that idea of oneness to me is something that you find integral in veganism, is that we're all the same, no matter what. And in the degrees that we're different, it's so much less than in the ways that we're the same. And so for me, it's really about wanting to have that same relationship with all animals that I have with my dogs.
That's awesome, right? Everyone loves dogs. Most people love dogs.
Yes.
And you would not eat your dog.
Yes. And most people would love a pig or a cow or any other animal that's put in front of them. We all just love animals so much as children. And we really have to be conditioned to tolerate the things that our society does to them today. It's not something that we do, I think, fully consciously. People eat animals really in spite of all the awful things that happen to them, not because of it. Most people wouldn't be able to even tolerate seeing what happens to the animals that they eat, much less do it themselves. So I think it's really just a matter of educating people and spreading awareness about what happens in factory farming. And then at the same time, we have cultured meat and other cultured products that are coming down the pipeline. And so I feel like those two things happening simultaneously is what's really going to set us free from this factory farming nightmare.
Can you just describe what you mean by cultured meat?
So cultured meat is the technology of taking cells non-invasively in a non-violent way from a living animal and then replicating them so that you're able to produce whatever cut you want of the meat. Or if you're doing something like skin, there's a lot of companies now that are trying to use cultured leather to create shoes and wallets. So whatever you're trying to create, you're just creating that particular product, if you will. And so you don't have all of the waste and inefficiencies that are tied to having an entire animal that you're raising and all the environmental degradation that comes with that as well. It's something that shockingly few people are aware of. I find when I talk, most people have no idea what's happening, what's brewing, if you will, with the cultured meat industry. But there's a lot of money that's being invested in it, and really important people, really intelligent people that are working on these projects. And so I have full confidence in the fact that the cultured animal product industry will make factory farming obsolete within the next 15 years, which is super exciting.
Do you know the fast food chain Plant Power?
Absolutely. Good friends of mine.
Jeffrey Harris.
Yes, he's amazing.
Yes, I went to his house and did a podcast.
Oh,
so,
that's wonderful.
Like you said, we're all connected.
Yeah, have fun.
Yeah, he's a great man. So we were talking, and factory farming, that term, animal agriculture was the term that I mentioned to him. Isn't that such a misrepresentation of what is happening?
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's not animal agriculture. It's like killing.
No, it's like the mass genocide of animals. Yeah. It's terrible, and we've always done that as society. Society has used euphemisms to make things not feel as bad as they are. But the veil is starting to come up. I think the internet has a huge amount to do with that, but also just the level of transparency that younger generations demand. They don't want the wool pulled over their eyes or even something synthetic. They really just want to know exactly what's going on. And I think with technologies also coming up like blockchain, the ability to track products from start to finish is something that we're going to see a lot more of. And because of that, the way that these products are sourced will change.
Yeah, that's funny because I coach, and you mentioned kids want to know what's going on. The old style of coaching was do this because I said so. Parenting as well. And now it's like, we'll do this. And they're like, well, why? Like, tell me why. It's like I have to actually explain what I want them to do, not just do this.
Because I saw it on TikTok.
Yeah, it's like, no, do it. I'm telling you to do it. So do it. Don't ask why. And I see it in coaching, and now you're saying with food, like, well, what's going in that, product or this or that? There's so much information readily accessible at your thumbs that there wasn't when I was growing up. I grew up with a Nokia brick phone, which was way ahead of its time. And the game I played was Snake. I don't know if you remember that game, Snake. You pressed like right, left, and you just tried to collect these little like black squares to make your snake longer. And that was the game. And it was just like amazing. And now it's like you could, basically be locked into your phone for way too long.
Absolutely.
And that's another whole issue where we're trying to always encourage our athletes at practice to be off your phone. It's like 70 and sunny, or there's 20 great kids around, make a new friend, get off your phone, be outside and be engaged, be present, because that's definitely like a lack of just participation. Like you're kind of like, oh, like if you have friends and you're all in the room together and everyone's on their phone, it's like, man, do you even want to be here right now?
What's the point?
It's kind of, the world needs to recognize that it's great we have all this technology at our fingertips, and then how we use it is super important, because it can be very detrimental to our social progression, especially as youth. As adults, you kind of figure out, oh, this is bad, this is good. All right, let's kind of fast forward here. So you're from Texas, you come out here, you've been vegan for 11 years, and then you started your own food brand, Seva Foods.
Yes.
And Seva Foods, from what I look like or had, because I actually tried your coconut jerky.
Oh, awesome.
I did not try the space ice cream.
We'll have to change that.
Yeah. So I tried the coconut jerky, and you have is that what
Uh-huh.
what it's called? Space ice cream.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be refrigerated, correct?
Correct. Shelf stable for up to 30 years.
Okay, please share even more, because 30 years is like, wow, that could go on any shelf. That's a smart way. Did you think about that when creating a product, like what can last a long time that's, better for us?
Honestly, the inception really is rooted in my experience as a little girl growing up in Houston, going to the Johnson Space Center. And I've always been a foodie, always just been absolutely obsessed with food. And the thing I would always look forward to the most was going and getting the astronaut ice cream at the gift shop at the end. So I had acquired a couple of home-sized freeze dryers in 2016, which is when I started working on my freeze-dried plant-based dog food company, Benji's. But I was just putting all kinds of things in the freeze dryers just to see how they turned out. And one of the things I was experimenting with was plant-based ice cream. I had actually have a background in web development and design. But in 2015, I segued into health and wellness. I knew I wanted to do something to be of service and to help people specifically with food. So the ice cream, the feedback I got from friends and family was just so strong, is really what compelled me to launch Seva Foods, coming up on our 5-year anniversary this August. So the astronaut ice cream that I grew up with is definitely very different from space ice cream, just a completely different ingredient deck. So all of our products are, of course, vegan, but also organic and gluten-free and free of any kind of artificial preservatives or oils or sweeteners. I really wanted to create a company that is the way that I eat. I would feel really weird about selling products that I personally wouldn't be willing to consume. And so there's this attention to detail when it comes to the ingredients that I think is unique. But essentially, the ice cream is freeze-dried, which is the reason that it can be shelf-stable. And the other nice thing about freeze-drying is that it retains up to 95% of the nutrients. So when you're dealing with really nutrient-dense, whole food-based ingredients like cashews and coconut milk and strawberries, there's a lot of nutrients that are inherent in those type of ingredients. But unfortunately, if you're looking at more of a traditional type of preserving snack food type of technology, most of those inherent nutrients are gone from just a high heat type of process, and then maybe they'll pump some synthetic nutrients back in. It's kind of similar to what we see with dog food and kibble. So by using freeze drying, you're able to retain all those nutrients, and you don't have to add anything synthetic in order to make it nutritious.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you a little bit.
Sure.
You're saying no artificial, no extra preservatives, and yet it lasts 30 years. Can you shed some light on, without giving away your secrets?
Yes.
The process of, are these your two main products, the coconut jerky and?
It's our initial offering. Yeah, we will be expanding as we're growing the company. I have lots of other product ideas, and obviously there's a lot of variations within just those two ranges as well. But it's no secret that freeze drying is the top way to preserve any type of food. It just has the best combination of convenience and then also of that retention that we talked about. If you look at something that's frozen, that's a great way to retain nutrients as well. But once you defrost that food, it changes in terms of the texture. It's not really that convenient to travel with. There's a lot of setbacks to frozen foods. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side of that, if you're looking at something that's highly preserved with a heat type of process, like most of the snacks that we see on the shelves today, they can be preserved up to a point. But it's a lot, the more preserved it is, the more type of chemicals they're using to preserve it. With freeze drying, you're removing all of the water, and you're doing it so quickly that you don't damage the structure of the object. A perfect example would be a grape. If you put a grape into a dehydrator or an oven, you get a raisin. It is somewhat similar to a grape nutritionally, but it definitely has some major chemical differences, and the experience of eating it is completely different. However, if you put a grape into a freeze dryer, you're still going to get a grape at the end. It's going to look and taste identical to that grape and have, up to 95% of the nutrients of that grape, but it'll be 70% lighter because all the water's been removed.
So people who are trying to lose weight should freeze dry themselves.
Probably not.
Guys, get
but
a freeze dryer.
Eat freeze-dried foods for sure.
Hyperbolic chambers is what Terrell Owens did to recover for his knee in a miraculously short period of time before the Super Bowl that I went to. And freeze drying takes out the water of foods. That is a great mini science class lesson. Appreciate that. I did not know that. And I think the goal of this podcast and Into the Blue Zone is to enlighten and share wisdom of guests and try to touch. It used to be one person. Now it's 10 people. So I'm going to say 11 people. I'm giving you an extra bonus point there for that great little freeze drying course. And then what fruit are you using for your product?
Currently with Space Ice Cream, we offer in 2 varieties. So we have vanilla and strawberry. So we use fresh frozen strawberries in that product. And obviously want to expand out to many other varieties. With ice cream, there's so many different ones that we can do. The hardest part in scaling up this particular product has definitely been with the freeze drying. It's not a super ubiquitous type of technology that's found in a lot of co-manufacturing plants in the U.S. So it's been really hard to find the proper manufacturing partner for us to be able to take this to the next level. But I have been working on it, and I'm not going to stop working on it. And I'm sure that we'll be able to increase the production later this year.
Awesome. I love how you have your hands in so many pots and you're all in all of them and very passionate. What's the cost of a freeze dryer? Or is that what it's called?
Yeah, the freeze dryers are, unfortunately, you have only one company, at least that I know of, that makes them in the U.S. for home use. And it's like a $3,000 machine, very tiny. I can only make about 40 units every 60 hours in them. And that doesn't include the pre-production that also goes in. So it's a very time-consuming process. And then, so they're either these little $3,000 machines or they're like $500,000 or at least. So. The size that we would need to work with would be $1 million machine for sure.
And that's why astronauts eat it, because it's really expensive. It costs a lot of money to get people to space.
The original astronaut ice cream was made for the Apollo missions, but it did not go up into space. Was not really astronaut ready. It's kind of like crumbly. And space ice cream is wonderful because it's actually in bite-sized pieces. So it's very much space ready.
I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then your coconut jerky, which was great. Talk a little bit about the process. You obviously season it and you have different flavors. You take the coconut, I'm closing my eyes and envisioning someone takes a machine and carves it out and you get the meat out.
Yeah.
And then you slice it thinly or thick, however you desire it.
Right.
And then what?
Well, so our coconut meat is currently sourced from Thailand, from sustainable coconut farms in Thailand. Unfortunately, we are not able to grow those types of coconuts domestically. So as we scale up that product, it will need to be made where the coconuts are grown to be the most environmentally friendly. But currently we're making it in small batches here in San Diego. So yes, we just take the young coconut and then scoop that out, and then that gets marinated in traditional jerky spices.
How long's the marinating process?
Oh, just overnight.
Okay.
It's not because it's coconut meat, one of the beauties about it is that it's very similar in terms of texture and the way that it behaves to animal meat. And I've actually had some longtime vegans try the coconut jerky and be like, oh, that's unsettling. It's just too meaty because the texture is much less vegetal and much more like a traditional jerky in terms of just the chewiness and the tear and all of that. But unlike conventional jerky, beef jerky in particular, it requires 3 times less water to produce, so much more environmentally friendly. And because it comes from plants, it offers a host of antioxidants and other phytonutrients that aren't found in animal meat. And then a lot of commercial jerkies have nitrates and MSG and just other things that are just in there that you don't really need to have. So like Space Ice Cream coconut jerky is also very minimal very minimal ingredients. And the preservation technique is not freeze drying, it's dehydrating in this case, but also low heat and doesn't really change the nutritional density of the product much.
Do you have a air fryer?
I do have
personal use?
one, yeah.
I've been I hear a lot of rave about it,
Yeah.
and I feel like I need one.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried making your own jerky, or how do you like it?
For jerky, I don't know how that would work because it's actually too high of a heat.
Okay.
With the jerky, we use dehydrators, which are essentially like a low temperature oven. So I set my dehydrators for the jerky to 115, which is a temperature that allows it to dry enough to be preserved, not for 30 years in this case, for about 2 years, but it doesn't over bake it, if you will. So dehydrating is great too, and dehydrating is something that people are a lot more familiar with. Anyone that's ever had a fruit roll up has had a dehydrated product. But with the jerky as well, very excited to introduce a variety of different flavors and types of products.
Yeah, I really liked it. So you could order it online.
Yeah,
correct?
SevaFoods.com.
SevaFoods.com. And Michelle, you are also on Instagram, and Seva Foods is on Instagram.
Yes,
so
on all the channels.
If you want to, please follow Michelle May and Seva Foods. And you're also involved in the Encinitas vegan food pop-up.
Yes.
And share a little bit about the starting of this pop-up, because I've been living in Leucadia for 5 years, and it's been kind of a new thing. I always would go to the Leucadia Farmers Market, and that was like the greatest thing for me because I could walk 5 minutes down the street.
That's great.
And it had a lot of options. And then maybe this past year, I discovered this vegan food pop-up, which was another 5-minute walk further. So I had to walk 10 minutes and it was all vegan. And it was like, ooh, I could really feed my id and really like feed my ego and kind of eat some good vegan food. And there was just so much variety when I went there with my buddy. And people are coming down from Los Angeles to little old Encinitas. What's kind of the origin here, and how long have you been starting that? And share a little bit about the vegan food pop-up.
I actually launched it in December of 2019. I wanted to create a venue where local vendors would be able to connect with the community to sell their products and to introduce the community to more plant-based foods. So we were very successful from the start. However, as everyone knows, in March 2020, everything came to a screeching halt, as did the pop-up. So we were able to pick it back up last summer as restrictions started to loosen, and it's been growing very quickly. Since then, we've been very fortunate to be featured by multiple different media channels locally, and that's really helped bring awareness about the event to the community. Obviously, for our vegan community, it's something that's been really appreciated and supported from the very start, which has been great because that's a community that I'm very much a part of. I love vegan food and I love trying new things, and I really despise driving. So that's really why I decided to start this particular event. But it's grown immensely, and now we're up to about 50 vendors, and we have a rotating, diverse group of vendors that come all the way from LA and Orange County. Of course, most of our vendors are locally based here in San Diego. I really curate the lineup very carefully to make sure that it's a really wonderful experience for our attendees in terms of the types of options that they have, but also for the vendors so that they all do really well by not having too many duplicates. So it's really, there's something for anybody that's there. Like with my own food company, Seva Foods, I don't advertise specifically to vegans. I'm really trying to cultivate an audience that comes from mainstream because I want to be able to have the most effect possible. And right now, vegans are still a really small percent of the population. So the bulk of the attendees are really not not vegans themselves, but are just plant curious folks who like trying new things. And we have a lot of foods from around the world as well, I think, which is also a really big appeal of the pop-up, because you're able to try foods from literally everywhere, from the Philippines, Japan, Mexico, Cuba, all parts of Africa. We just have such a cool variety of food and so many wonderful vendors that are participating.
Yeah, when I've been there one or two times, I just loved all the variety, like you just mentioned. And yeah, it's like great location. It's right off the 101 in Encinitas. So whoever's driving by and like, oh, what's that going on?
Yeah.
Let's hop out. And, all the good food that's vegan, I think anyone would enjoy it. It all tastes good. It's not like you're eating dirt.
No, it's actually not, the food there is pretty omnivore friendly. I've actually gotten some requests more and more recently from people that want more healthy food, which we are bringing in some more healthy options. But for the most part, it's food that really anybody will enjoy, because, who doesn't like pizza and hamburgers and donuts? I mean, the donut line's ridiculous. The donut vendor, there's always a minimum 30-minute wait for donuts, no matter what time. You can come early, you can be at the end, you're going to wait for donuts. And so I think it's proven that vegan donuts are universal.
How much of your diet, just quick segue question, is like vegan versus like whole food plant-based?
I try to be almost entirely whole food plant-based. Obviously, the pop-up has been a little bit of an issue in terms of that, because there's a lot of good stuff there. But for the most part, during the week, I really try to keep it super clean. I personally am not only gluten-free, but I try to be grain-free as much as possible.
Grain-free?
Yeah.
And what's the reasoning there?
I just feel so much better. Yeah, I touched on earlier dairy allergies. I also definitely have gluten sensitivities, rice sensitivities, corn. All of those things I've noticed can cause issues for me. I just feel so much better when I avoid them. So the majority of my diet is fresh fruit, fresh vegetables. I do a lot of juice. Grain-free bread, you mentioned Nectarine Grove. Love that place. Actually just came from there because I love their grain-free breads a lot. I stopped actually making them after Nectarine Grove and Healthy Creations started making them. So and then I also love just eating just vegetables. I love cooking any kind of cooked vegetable. I really am not picky when it comes to that. So I tend to eat mostly definitely whole food based. And I feel like the type of food that we have at the pop-up, a lot of it is food that should be special occasion food.
Yes.
And not like part of your...
A Sunday treat yourself.
Yeah, Sunday treat yourself. I mean, my husband and I both tend to kind of, be a little bit looser with our diets on the weekend. But I also find that the older I get, the less I really want to deviate from my healthy diet. I actually really enjoy eating that way. I'd say probably the best thing that my parents did for me was establishing not only this love, but actual need for fresh fruits and vegetables. I can't go a day without having them, or I really miss it.
Okay, so this will be a perfect intro to our sauce tasting event. So you're loving vegetables, and I have two sauces that will blow your mind. So I'm gonna have you taste them.
Okay, which one first?
You could choose. So we made the food line is called Sky's the Limit. So under a plant-based production is my podcast called Into the Blue Zone. Me and my friend and partner John Swafford, the chef at the Regal Seagull, are doing a cooking show called the Swafford Flow Cooking Show. And we also have created sauces. These are my mother's recipes. And the food line is Sky's the Limit. We're calling this Caesar of the Gods.
That's really good. That's perfect. And you would just thin it out a little bit with some water? Yeah,
it kind of thins out as it gets warm. It's kind of like a dressing sauce dip.
It's really good. I love Caesars.
Multi-purposeful. So kind of you could
even put it on roasted veggies too.
You could just put it on a salad, get real healthy, or you could dip veggies and be real healthy, or you could just do bread.
Yeah.
And
And then which one's this?
A pizza. This is Thai peanut magic.
Ooh, this would be really good with spring rolls.
That was made this morning.
Or a bootable.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I made over at Nectarine Grove, they have a fajita bowl.
I've had it.
So I'm glad you like it. I made my own fajita bowl and just put that sauce just now with spinach,
so good.
black beans, and some veggies and butternut squash noodles with that sauce.
Do you make your own zoodles?
I did not.
Where do you get the butternut squash noodles from?
I was at the Seaside Market last night.
Oh, you just get them from there. Okay.
Yeah. So tried to make my own rendition. It came out pretty good. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to, grow with these sauces and the whole program that I've
They
created.
can be good on pasta too. I eat a lot of bean pasta. So I have for dinner a few nights a week. I'll have like bonza, one of those. Either one of those would be really good.
Yeah, when like an Asian noodle, whatever. It's I've gotten good reviews, so
it's really good. Yeah, I'll have to bring it to the pop-up.
Yes, and like I'll have my own pop-up at the pop-up. Let's chat about Benji and what's Benji's, because my parents have a dog, my brother has a dog. Share a little bit about your next endeavor.
So Benji's, actually predates all of the other endeavors that we've been talking about, but I've had to put it on pause to focus on Seva. I'm hoping to be able to get back to it this year. Benji's is going to be the world's first plant-based, freeze-dried, human-grade dog food company, pet food company in general, actually, I think. And the thing that really sets it apart is that it would be the first commercially developed food that meets AAFCO standards, which are the nutritional standards that are set for commercial dog food. It meets those without any synthetic nutrients. So the vitamin D comes from maitake mushrooms. The calcium comes from kale and other greens. And because it's freeze-dried, it has it's sort of the best of both worlds. So for the dog's person, it's got the convenience factor because it's really easy to store and to prepare. But for the dog, it has the nutritional density that you find in fresh whole foods. Benji's is named after my dog Benji, who passed away in 2014, unfortunately in a car accident. And I really started as a way to heal from that, from the pain of losing him, which is still, even all these years later, still really hard. So he was a rescue and a voracious eater. So it feels very fitting to have a food company named after him. And I'm hoping to use the food company as a way to do what I really want to be doing with my time, which is dog rescue. So Benji's Inc. will fund Benji's Foundation, which is the way that I hope to be able to create real change for dogs across the globe.
And how involved are you with like animal activism and like kind of that side of veganism? You seem very passionate about, being humane.
Yeah, for sure. My activism definitely doesn't look the same as it did a couple of years ago. So I used to be pretty active with DXE and would volunteer frequently with Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I was an organizer for Vegan Lady Boss, cultivating vegan community within the vegan women's groups. But I've really now focused my activism through my businesses. I call it for-profit activism, basically, because it's the way where I feel like it can be the most effective. I know for some people, they have no interest in wanting to do all of the things that come with starting a vegan food company. And so for them, their activism is going to be going and protesting, fur at Nordstrom's. And that's great. And it's something that I find really valuable. I feel like any activism in any form is of value. But for me right now, my focus is on creating companies that are going to be able to not only help create this vegan world that we want to live in, but also put me in a place financially where I'm able to support the groups that I care about, like DXE, that I think are doing some really important work.
Keep going. You're doing a great job, so keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it could be hard to get out of bed and you're like, I just want to sleep a little longer. And then some days you're fired up and just keep being fired up. And like, I just kind of heard from a guy on social media that like seitan, the meat alternatives, tofu and tempeh and jackfruit, those are the big four that kind of pop into my head right away. what's your take on those 4: tofu, jackfruit, seitan, and tempeh? And do you use them? Does it work well with your body? And do you believe they're like kind of healthy for you? Because I always had this like thought that, oh, it's fake meat. And then I kind of researched a little more and started opening my ears a little bit and realized it's pretty good for you. And, you know, the unprocessed stuff. What's your take on that?
I have very strong opinions about this, so thank you for asking. Just to back up a little bit, I'm glad that you brought those up as opposed to something like Beyond Meat or Impossible, which I firmly believe people should be eating those types of things no more than once a week, maybe even no more than once a month, just because it's so heavily processed, and definitely not something that's a part of my diet. I mean, no shade on Beyond. I feel like what they're doing is incredible, but for most of us that are trying to eat a healthy diet, it's not part of the regular menu. And so those sort of meat-like alternatives that you mentioned, I think those are all, for the most part, you know, can be used on a rotating basis depending on what you're trying to accomplish. I personally don't eat a lot of seitan, even though it's super delicious, because of the wheat aspect. It's not something that I eat on a regular basis. I just find it to be extremely inflammatory, but it is very delicious and texturally probably the most enjoyable. That being said, I eat a massive amount of tofu. I love tofu. I always have, you know, being raised vegetarian. It's something that I can eat endlessly and never get tired of. I don't eat it endlessly because I like to have a lot of nutritional diversity. I think one of the keys to being healthy on a whole food plant-based diet is eating a lot of diversity. So I'll have tofu one day and black beans the next day and kind of mix it up like that. But that's definitely my go-to. I also really love soy curls. I'm trying to make it my mission on this planet to spread the good news about soy curls because it's a product people don't really know about. It's not, for some bizarre reason, really available at grocery stores, but you can buy it on Amazon. And it's one ingredient. It's just soybean that's been exploded. And it's very texturally very similar to chicken. So I eat a lot of soy curls and a lot of tofu. To a lesser extent, I do like tempeh. I don't find it as versatile. It takes longer to cook. You have to do more with it. I really love San Diego tempeh. I think if you're able to get that fresh at the farmer's market, I mean, I have to stop myself from eating it while I'm cooking it because it's so good. Whereas if you've ever had store-bought tempeh, you know that's not a temptation because it's quite bitter. So I think that as far as jackfruit is concerned, you know, for me as someone that does strength training and is actively trying to build muscle, it's probably not one I would use as a meat substitute because it doesn't have as much protein as the other ones that you mentioned. But I do like jackfruit and I enjoy it. I think it's tasty and texturally it's very interesting. So it's great in certain things.
Yeah, we just experimented with a barbecue jackfruit sandwich and Chef John made his homemade barbecue sauce and it tasted amazing. And
So
I
good.
often do not eat jackfruit, like never.
Yeah.
And it looks so much like pulled pork.
It's crazy.
That, you know, you're just tricking your brain and your eye at this point after being plant-based vegan for 5 years. If it looks it, like I just assume it is.
We eat so much with our eyes. That's half the battle for sure.
And then tofu, there's a lot of stigma around, you know, a lot of tofu's bad, tofu this.
It's absurd. It all stems from reports that are now almost 40 years old that are really from the 80s that were funded directly by the beef and the dairy industries. I mean, it's just so ludicrous. It just shows you like the amount of disconnect that people have between like reasonable ideas and like just what they hear everybody say, because clearly if soy did things like grow your breasts, half of the population would already be eating it. And then if you look at Asia, I mean, you've got billions of people that are eating soy-based products several times a day with only positive consequence. So it's unfortunate. We have a long way to go. I personally would not use soy in any of my commercial products because of that, because I'm making products for mainstream people. And I don't want to have to fight against that stigma. But for me personally, I love soy as long as it's unprocessed organic. It has to be organic for sure. That's an important part of it.
What are a couple go-to? You're in a pinch and like someone's watching and or listening, and they're like, "Man, I just don't know where to get started." Like, what's like? Give me 5 things give me your 5 pillars. I'll start. I think my sauce, Caesar of the Gods, and kale. I think kale is like a staple of what I would recommend people to eat. What's one? We'll go back and forth.
I would back up even before that and go back to what I think is easily the easiest yet most overlooked pillar of health, which is hydration. People are ridiculous when it comes to their water consumption, like to the point where it makes me angry, because it's so easy to drink water and so few people do it. I mean, everybody on this planet can benefit from having a 32-ounce glass of warm water with some lemon in the morning before they put coffee or anything else down their system, but so few people do it. And the reason I bring it up in this context is because it's so important to healthy digestion and to being able to assimilate all the nutrients that you're going to get from your food later. Without that kind of strategic approach to drinking water, I think that a lot of what we're doing with nutrition is inconsequential.
Okay, I'm gonna just let you roll with it. I just said one and fired you up. I love it. So I like it. You throw a little salt in there, and I feel really cleansed, and that's a good go-to.
It also helps people from overeating too. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that just want to snack endlessly. I probably shouldn't admit this because I have a snack food company, but I don't snack at all. I sometimes will integrate snacks into my meals. But because of the hydration schedule that I have myself on, I can't snack because really we should be letting our systems rest at least 4 hours before having any water, just because it dilutes the digestive juices and makes your digestion less effective, can cause things like bloating and just things that are unenjoyable like heartburn. So if we're waiting 4 hours between each meal to drink water, then we can't be just mindlessly snacking all day. And so I think a really good schedule for people to have is to have that 32 ounces of warm water in the morning, with some lemon, maybe with a little bit of salt for the minerals. And then what I do is before I have a meal, at least 20 minutes before any meal, I'll have another 32 ounces of warm water. And then, of course, if I do any kind of rigorous exercise, I'll also have water after that. By doing that, I mean, it really offers such an upgrade. People will notice less pain in their joints, less headaches, better mood, better sleeping, for sure, better digestion. Skin looks better. And it's free. That's the thing that's so crazy about it. It's water, so it's free, basically, or almost free. So it's really something easy that people can do to upgrade their health. But in terms of food, I think it's really important to start your day with food that's also very hydrating. So I generally will have either a green juice or fresh fruit as my first meal every day. And I think that's something that people can do, maybe not be in such a rush to get a bunch of refined carbohydrates in their system, doing like a breakfast sandwich or a cereal or something like that, I think is another way that people are kind of chronically dehydrated because they're not starting their day off with sort of juicy type of food.
The water comments you made remind me of my birthright trip to Israel, where not only Israel, there's several countries out there where you can't drink the water. And when I was in Israel, like you have to get bottled water.
Yeah.
It makes you appreciate America, and whether it's tap water or the water at the vegan food pop-up out of, the water fountain or the Kitty, whatever. The water here in America is basically pretty healthy. Where in Israel, when I went, like, do not drink that. You will get sick.
That's terrible.
And it just kind of, you jogged my memory on like how appreciative I am of just being in America.
Right.
Like we could drink any water all the time. So drink more water, people.
Yes,
and like,
for sure.
As you're getting older, like a lot of people are like, oh, you're dehydrated. Like grandma, grandpa get dehydrated and you got to go to the hospital. It's like, you got to drink water. And
you got to get into the habit now so that it's not something, it's just something that becomes your habit as you get older. And it's not something you have to be reminding or being reminded of.
Do you feel like raw foods and like the vegan diet is for everyone? Because I hear, it's not a sexist comment, but like women are like, I need fish. Like I hear that often, or I have heard that in the past. What's your take on like, I need fish? And like, I feel like if you study and learn about food, you can't just dive in and eat Oreos and have water and just kind of, you got to learn about food.
Right.
And I feel like strongly that we should all have our masters in nutrition.
Well, it's one of the failings of our public school system is that we don't know how to feed ourselves, and the reality is that humans, like all animals, have nutrient requirements, not ingredient requirements. So there's not a human on this planet that needs fish. They may need some of the nutrients that are found in fish, but fortunately, the nutrients that are found in fish are found in plants because that's what fish eat. They're, for the most part, a lot of the fish that we're eating are eating plants or eating plankton, or even if you look at top of the chain fish like tuna, the fish that they're eating are plant-based eaters. So I really feel like if someone is having those types of cravings, they should get a complete blood panel done. I really suggest anybody, I don't care if you're vegan, pescatarian, whatever, everybody, but especially vegans, should be getting their blood work done every year, because then you can see the deficiencies if there are any. And if there aren't any, then maybe that will help people that are kind of struggling with those cravings, make peace with them. But, there's all types of different types of seafoods that we can eat that come from plants, that could also maybe assuage some of those cravings. But I do, to answer your original question, I do feel like everybody on this planet can be plant-based. It may look different for different people. Everyone's needs are different. Even though grains feel terrible for me, I guess there's lots of people that can eat them and feel good. So not everybody needs to avoid grains. So I feel like while there's certain things that are universal, like we should all be eating more fresh fruits and vegetables, we should all be drinking more water, there's a lot of varieties within a plant-based diet, much more so than within an animal-inclusive one, I should say, just because of the sheer variety of foods that are available. But that's going to look probably different for everybody, just based on their tastes.
I love it. Great response. And I totally agree. And I think plant-based is for everyone, that food. And, sure, there's the exception, like a 90-10 rule. Like, yeah, you could have that 10%, like one time a week, you could have that like really Beyond Burger. And then like, that's it though. And like get back to, eating less, being more mindful. How about practicing yoga? I know you used to be big into yoga and life happened, and you're still probably big into breathing and stretching and yoga and all that. And being an athlete and a coach myself, like, it's a balance of working out and putting on muscle and like pushing myself, and then also like, all right, staying loose and staying limber,
right?
Because we all want to be able to wipe our ass when we get old.
And
you have to be able to stretch.
Key. You have to be able. I want to be functional my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
That really informs everything that I do when it comes to my fitness routine. I used to be really into yoga. I suffered from depression in my 20s, and I give dogs and yoga like 50-50 credit for pulling me out of that. And so I definitely still have a lot of love for yoga. Because I wanted to start strength training more, I had to cut back on the yoga just because there's only so many hours in the day. And also because I didn't want to have like a hip replacement. I was doing Ashtanga, which I saw a lot of that within the Ashtanga community just because it's such an extreme way to approach asana. So now I do hot yoga 3 days a week. I try to run 3 days a week. I'm also hiking with my dogs every day and strength training 4 to 6 days a week. So not as much time for yoga, but I don't think I'll ever be without it. I think I'm going to have my 18-year anniversary this year of practicing. And it's something I really feel I need. Not as flexible as I used to be, but that's okay because it's really less about being able to do, pretzel party tricks and more about having a really healthy, strong, reliable body that's going to be there for me, hopefully the rest of my life.
Yeah, it sounds like you're balancing it all out, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on in everyone's life. I feel like the world has picked up speed and trying to slow down a little bit and get back to like lockdown mode, I'll call it. Yeah. Whereas like all I was doing is running, biking, stretching, eating healthy, and sleeping. It was amazing.
Right.
I super blessed and fortunate to live by the 101. I would go out there and run and bike when everyone was locked down. I was like, wow, this is like the greatest time in my life. And it's messed up saying that.
I know. Like, I felt kind of guilty too. It wasn't terrible for me either.
Yeah, I made a lot of juice out of those lemons. And well, I got a couple more questions, and I want to take a quick pause for station identification. You guys are listening to Into the Blue Zone, a plant-based production. Michelle, if you could wave to the camera, and hopefully we have one viewer. We'll see. It's kind of funny. You like go and you're like, oh, like 5 people watched. All right, cool.
It's the algorithms. You can't compete against that.
And competing, living in abundance. You could live in scarcity and have this like, overly critical mindset. Sure. And then you could live in abundance. Like, sure, there's only one Joe Rogan and one Rich Roll and one Simon Hill, it doesn't mean I can't do my podcast and love it. And it's like people like you who come on, and what I really love about the podcast and the passion and just the truth. And we're all trying to make the world a little bit better without being a psychiatrist dealing with people's like real deep problems. And it's kind of like it's a fun, uplifting avenue, passion project. And I appreciate you coming on. So, and then I'm stoked that I got you some sauces.
Yeah, so good.
And I can't wait to be at the vegan food pop-up. So, wrapping up here, sports. I wanted to talk about it a little bit and kind of just ask you, like, all right, I see Steph Curry and Simone Biles on a Subway commercial. Do they eat Subway?
There's no way. It's just not, it's not possible to be at that caliber. I don't think. I mean, I just think it would be such a waste of time and effort that's spent on every other aspect of these people's lives to then, it's like having like the most expensive sports car in the world and then just going down to the Shell station and putting shitty gas in it. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think when it comes down to it, it's all about money, which is unfortunate. But I feel like that those type of big corporations that really only exist to benefit themselves, that model is changing really quickly. And I feel like the Subways and McDonald's of the world are going to have to change, or they're going to go extinct, because that kind of greed and disregard for everybody else, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and I know I might have a couple of my athletes watching or listening at a future date, or friends. Like, it's really important to know that as a kid, you could believe that stuff. Like, this football player is eating that pizza, and, the mustache, the milk mustache, and all the dairy stuff. And then you start watching a documentary and you read and you take a class and you realize the funding for that commercial, the funding for this campaign of dairy and whatever was backed by this company. And it's all really backwards and twisted and fine print. And it's really kept under the rug nicely. And I think, like you said, it's a dying breed. It's going quickly. Maybe I shouldn't say that. it's going quickly though. And like, I haven't had, Plant Power I do have, so that's kind of fast food still.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Plant Power and the pop-up. It's very, obviously similar type of food. It's it's food that is meant to be occasional, and it's entertainment,
Comfort
and
food.
the nice thing about Plant Power is that nobody dies at the end of the day, because it doesn't have the saturation that kills people through heart attacks when they eat that kind of food, and it doesn't cause the death of the animal that's being eaten at a traditional fast food company. So the food companies, the food industry is really catching up. I feel like whether it's cultured food, to help all the people out there that don't want to stop eating meat, stop supporting the factory farming system, or it's just the constant upgrade of the more processed foods. Even if you look at something like a Beyond Burger, I'm sure that they're thinking of and working actively today on ways to make that a healthier product, because that's the backlash that you get, right? And I can't say that I disagree. If somebody was just going to say, is it healthier for me? I'm not talking about the planet. I'm not talking about the ethics of animals, but is it healthier for me to eat a cow-derived hamburger once in a blue moon, or eat Beyond Burger several days, a week? The hamburger is going to win because it's real food. I don't think people should be doing that. And I don't think they should have to make that choice. And so the good thing is that the food industry is really coming to meet people where they're at, helping them make the ethical choice, the nutritious choice, the one that's the correct one for the environment. And most importantly, the one that they'll actually eat, because everything else is irrelevant otherwise.
Awesome. All right. So I've been asking this one question to all my guests, and I want to ask you, what is the key to life?
I'm finding that the key to life is to be of service. That is something that has just been reiterated to me on numerous occasions throughout my life, and it seems to be something that is irrefutable now. It's just that the key to happiness, the key to being successful in life, is to be as helpful and as kind as you can to yourself and to everyone around you.
Yeah, that's really important. Being kind to yourself. It's very easy for me. I could be very critical of myself, like way too much. And that kind of radiates to other people. And then you start complaining and condemning. Be kind to yourself, work your ass off, do your job, pull your weight, take care of yourself, be fit, eat well, and then, slowly help others if you can, or lead by example. I think what you're doing is tremendous. You're leading by example. You're fit, you take care of yourself, you're eating well. I probably can't say enough of positive things that you're doing, even though I've only known you for an hour and a 10-minute talk at the Vegan Food Pop-Up. What you're doing is amazing, and I appreciate you coming onto the show and sharing some wisdom. Is there any last parting words that you would like to add to Into the Blue Zone?
Oh, just that I think it's wonderful what you're doing here, offering a platform up where people can really learn more about all the ways that they can improve their own lives and hopefully that of the planet as well.
How about this? If you could look at the camera and make one suggestion, like a documentary for someone who, like, okay, watch this or try this. What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to say Earthlings, which is probably the one that most people will, because I've actually never watched it. And so while I do think there's a place that it definitely is very important, I feel like people, it can be extremely traumatizing to see that kind of stuff. So I feel like someone could even just start out by watching, even Cowspiracy, even though it's aged very well, even though it's several years old now. I've watched that documentary at least a dozen times and have learned something new. I think it's a really great way to get inspired and educated at the same time to make some big changes in your diet if that's something that you're aiming to do.
I love it. I watched Cowspiracy. I saw Seaspiracy. Cowspiracy was like this, holy shit.
Yeah.
The environment, like there's another one called Need to Grow about the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, like this guy's project was burned down when he was like creating this greatest like grow house of hydroponic system of food on how to grow food without soil, because our soil is getting deteriorated from pesticides and herbicides and all that stuff. And that's a whole nother, I'm sure we'll have you back on the show at a later date as great. Like a part 2. So Michelle, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.